Before we kick this one off, I want to wish you guys the very best 2025 possible. I really hope you guys have done some work over the new year, ready to start and kill this year. It's a huge year. I mean, the volatility is crazy already. We can see that from the first week. And let's kick into what we've got going on FTMO. So to start with, the funded account is actually in the most profit I've ever had. We're actually up 1.5%. I'm due a payout actually on Monday, so I'm going to wait for that. Secured about £1,000 after profit split, which is very good. Obviously, I'm in the UK, and it's the most money I've had in a payout. £1,000 is a Q1 goal, and I've achieved that already. So very, very grateful for that. As we go into the challenge, phase 2. Phase 2's been passed as well. I mean, there were so many good opportunities for EU, GU downside. Dollar looking strong. It was so clear as day that they were the moves. I mean, I set 7 entries. 3 positions got tagged in. 1 position I took off, which would have actually won. I'd be looking at a nearly 4k profit on the funded on the 100k account. We can't look at the if, buts or maybes because, of course, things happen and you change things. But it goes to show you don't need to be perfect. You just need to do the right things. I managed to pass this with 6 trading days. And you can see from these trading days here, 1 and 2, 4 of them were 0.01. So we've done a good job. And we passed that, even though going back into drawdown this week, I had 2 losses to start the week. And then the winner was over 4R. It called us back the win. But I just want to show you guys how simple and how easy it is to trade when you actually look at the trend. You look at the order flow and where things are going. Let's kick this off. I have marked up the charts to start the week. And we're going to go back to what the DXY looked at. The DXY is what I use, if you guys don't know, as a rough guide of how I can, tolerate EU and GU based on the week. And if things aren't lining up, I tend to stay away on the pairs. But you can see here that we're getting bullish closures on DXY on the weekly. I don't have anything crazy to tell you that I break down things in a difficult manner that's going to make you, worried or understanding. I don't have anything crazy that you're not going to understand, to be honest, when it comes down to this. So it's very easy analysis that makes the most sense. It's not about being crazy difficult. Simply put, we're looking now, I would say, looking to the left, we can see we've got a key level at 110, our weekly fair value gap that we formed based on this pullback before we saw the huge downside is around the 110 level. So in my eyes, we're going to 110. People may say, okay, we have not seen a pullback. Another key level that I've used is 107, and we haven't liked to hold above that. You have to consider what's going on in the fundamental aspect of Trump getting in, dollars popped. Until I start to see dollar weakness, I'm not going to believe it's dollar weakness. And many traders can benefit off that because you want to be clever and try and call the high. It's not needed. Just call the pullback. Therefore, looking at this week on the weekly time frame, I've marked in previous weekly high. You can also mark in the previous weekly low. So there was the possibility coming into this week that we were going to see a retest coming back into this weekly fair value gap that hasn't been tapped. On the daily, I mean, you can see that we've already come into it, this fair value gap here, and we've made a high off it. So we could come back into the daily and come back up. And overall, a point at which I would look for upside is, especially when we get the imbalance fill. And what I mean by imbalance fill is we have potentially, formed a lot of volume from the previous weekly candle. If we come and retest the previous weekly high off that and come up, to me that looks like a really good fill. That stops a fair value gap being formed, and I see it as the volume strong. We're going to see continued upside. As soon as we get daily confirms off that weekly confirm there, I mean, the weekly confirm's so strong, how can you not look for further upside to that key level there? As for EU, let's go on to that. And I've somewhat already marked up the higher time frames, but if we go to how we're looking on the weekly. Okay, right, so the previous week, we simply formed a top wick into the fair value gap / imbalance, and we filled it and we continued down. We also have a POI further down into here, which is this fair value gap, which started from here, the high. We tapped into it, the body, and I look at the body to wick ratio as well. 122 pips versus a 80 pip wick. So although the wick's quite big, the body relative to the wick is still stronger. I'm going to have to play a weekly confirm off that, especially with my DXY analysis. And then I'd look at the overall daily time frame and I'd look, okay, what happened last week? Well, last week we saw a sweep of liquidity from these highs, equal highs, whatever you want to call it, previous weekly highs. And we made a new low, which took out this significant low from last year. So this is last year's low, and we cleared that from this wick. Therefore, this becomes a daily POI. This is a daily unmitigated wick. I would like to set a sell around that. So what I did was I looked at the daily and actually set up a little hot zone within it. I like to do this on the higher time frames. I'm pretty much telling you exactly how I trade. Basically, within this whole area, I looked for a nice little area on the lower time frame. So I've scrolled down and I found a nice 2 hour order block, I think it was. So I've set my position off the 2 hour order block within this area. And when I mark up a hot zone in red, it's an area of interest. I will choose within that area where I want to get in. And it's just down to initiative. It's not down to anything in particular. But I've set it there. You could have got in off the start of the daily wick. When I've marked this in off the close of the previous daily candle there, it's really based on the gaps that happen. So that's for another time, but I'm looking at a trade from that area. So I'm set that in. What am I looking for? Previous weekly lows get taken out. We also have the imbalance fill up here. I've then gone to the 4 hour and I've also set a higher time frame position off the 4 hour as well. So I've got a higher time frame from up here. I also set a position actually off I think it's this fair value. No, was it this one here? It was this order block or fair value. I think it was this really small fair value gap we had on the 4. And it was very small. But it was within that area of the 4 hour POIs. If our leg is going to look like this on the fib, we're looking at, high to low. We're in the golden area. I set a position in case we fell without needing a top wick, because we have to look at the weekly. And I said about, we come into that fair value gap and we continue down off it. So we may not need to come that high up. So I've got to give that 4 hour leg a go, because we did clear the lows with that 4 hour high. And you can see that I had this idea. Not the biggest stop loss. I think it was around 50 pips. And we wanted to target down the lows. So not as big as this trade. But that was EU setting up. So I'm now waiting, because we formed the low. I'm waiting for a pullback. I want to be selling in the higher area of the daily range to play back to the low. If you're getting too low, as you can see what happens on GU here, you get caught out. And if we go into GU, if I'm looking at this trade, I learned a lot from this week on GU. GU is a bit of a quicker mover. It does show its hand quite quickly, but you can be wrong before you see what it's going to play. What I'd like to really break down on everything here with GU is there's a lot to talk about, to be honest. There's a lot to talk about. So in regards to what we've seen on GU on the weekly time frame especially, I mean, you can see that we're playing from this low to this high. And we have many times tried to come into areas to potentially see upside from this high to low. We first are looking at probably this order block. We saw a candle break through it. Okay, that's been invalidated. Then we start to see this fair value gap. Okay, that's the same week. It's invalidated. Then we start to look at, okay, maybe it's this fair value gap. And then that got invalidated there. So every time we see an invalidation, especially then we start looking at this order block, we can see that once we held this area and we tapped into 125 key level, once we pull back and form the resistance, it's highly likely we're going to start looking at this low to be taken out. And then why this low is so important on GU, and I'm talking about this as if I knew this at the time. I didn't. This is clearly liquidity. And with liquidity, especially if we're playing that to continue higher, you want to see the weekly candle close above it. You want to see the week close. We saw a strong candle there on the weekly. I mean, I don't need to say any more. You saw 2 weekly candles at 125. We failed and then we held. So that means we're going to likely see a downside push to this wick low instead. Therefore, that wick's invalidated and that's not the liquidity we need to continue higher. Therefore, take that off. There was clear downside now to take out this low. There should have been a strong bearish bias, especially with breaking the key level on the weekly. So many things going for it. I think looking back, it hurts me because I took losses on GU and I took off a trade that would have won. Originally, during the week, you can see the same thing as EU. We come into this fair value and we held it and we filled it. I think just about nearly filled it. Closed down. Therefore, downside. Also at the time, I'd mark this up as a order block that has, it's not been formed, but it's in the making of being formed. Of course, if an entry comes up to that, it invalidates it being a strong order block. But in my eyes at the minute, the way that's closed, it looks good. I actually set a position off that weekly time frame, and that was the move there. About a 50 pip stop with a target to the low. So again, nearly a 4-hour trade. And off the daily time frame here, you can see that I'm definitely expecting a retest of 125 key level, with that being the imbalance fill as well. Therefore, coming into this week, heavily expecting a pullback on the dollar pairs, but ultimately, with the way DXY looks, looking to see upside after we see a pullback. So let's see how Monday started off, because on Monday I'm not going to play a EU GU buy based on a pullback. So you can see there we did get the pullback, and that's fine. I'm happy to see that. I've accidentally skipped the whole week, but I set these positions at the start of the week. So you can see here on EU, especially on the 4-hour, that trade took an L. I got tagged into the other trade, so that's 1R L. I was too low for that entry. Looking back, that's just the way I trade. I don't look back at that in hindsight thinking I did something wrong. But as for GU, coming into Monday, I had a different idea. I've got a certain entry I use based on us taking out this wick high, especially more as an inducement than anything else, to see a pullback. If we go onto the 1-hour leg, I set a position off, I think it was somewhere around here. I think we got in off this fair value gap, had about 50 pip stop, and was looking to target, let's get this entry here, it's just about 2R on GU. Had an entry somewhat around here based on this 1-hour leg. I think looking back, and this is a tough one because I ended up taking this trade off based on this loss, and my analysis after that trade lost on Monday. What I ended up looking at is, you can see here, this trade did not win. I got taken out, and I had 2 losses on Monday based on that. And I said, right, okay, what did I do wrong? Because on EU, I can't really make up too much. I'm really liking the idea on the weekly of this particular wick being taken out. This low looked really good. And I said, you know what? I'm looking for that. But we're a little bit higher on GU in the way that we've already come into that wick, which was, where was it? It was somewhere here. The previous week, we took out that wick. Not the low of the wick, but that wick there. So we're a little bit higher, and I said, right, okay, let me analyze this. I looked at 125 key level. I like to use my key levels. It's the way I've done things for a while. And I said, right, okay, if we're going to break that to the downside, wouldn't it be wise to wait for a resistance to form? Wouldn't it be wise to see some kind of retest / fake out? And you can see here to the left is where we've actually seen that here. We've continued down. We did it here. We didn't. But at least retesting that level quite well, you would assume that's the better entry for a sell below that key level. We don't like to hold below 125 very easily at all. I know the market sentiment is very bearish on GU at the minute. We're seeing some weak pound stuff as well. But I think at the minute you can see a lot of retests to the upside. And I was waiting more for a resistance to form once Monday took a loss. So I took that trade off on Tuesday morning. Tuesday morning tagged me in and dropped, of course. And it was actually a really good entry. And guy didn't win that. Goes to show though that we saw that resistance below that level, a fake out back below 125, and you can see the next day continue down to the low. So very good trade. I did not win that. And it's not, I say it again, it's not about being perfect. But on EU, I did take that trade, the way it looked, and we ended up seeing a bearish candle. At that point, I was setting up for more sells, and they didn't get tagged in as I used my limits. We saw continue downside the rest of the week. NFP just come in, and we took out the low, which was my target. So I couldn't have played any better that EU trade, even though I did take one loss on that. So that was the week. DXY formed support, retested the highs. I've traded support and resistance. I've traded SMC, so to speak, however you want to call that. And I try and blend the two together. Therefore, it's simple. If you continue the trend until we see breaks of significant daily lows or highs, we're not going to change the trend. Stop trying to play a low or high play, trading counter trend, because ultimately you're just trying to be too clever. I managed to get an entry here that on EU only ran about 2 pips higher before it dropped, and I managed to catch an absolute perfect move, to be honest. And it's just playing the trend. It's selling high and buying, if you do buy, if you look at it inversely, buying low down at the lows here. So that was my week, and that's what's allowed me now to get 300k funding within the first week of the whole year. And I've got a goal of 500k for Q1. But if you told me that first week I'd get 300k and I'd bagged them 2 phase 2s, I wouldn't probably believe you. So I'm very grateful for that. I continue to work hard, and I always don't strive to be perfect because I'm far from it this week. But I've managed to end the week with a couple of R. You can see that here. If we go into this, we managed to catch 2 losses and 1 win. So that's 2 R for the week. If I can do 2 every week, it's 100 R for the year. Probably one of the best traders out there in the world. So very, very good for that. I think if any of you guys took losses this week or did not make money, NFPs, look, it's not an easy week to make money. It's very difficult to catch the trades. There's a lot of volatility and a lot of manipulation in the way that when we're coming up here, people are thinking, oh, it's buys, but it's the trend. You just got to follow the trend, and it's not difficult. Stop trying to be clever, because I'm a clever guy and I've been caught out in them before. And it's not about how smart you are. The IQ doesn't really matter. I'm sure there's traders that have done well that have a below 100 IQ. It's about, can you make logical decisions every day that are in line with your plan and just allow you to do well. So yeah, hopefully next week, we're going to start trading these 2 100Ks that I've just, oh, here we go. We're in. So yeah, there you go. Managed to obviously pass this. The profitable day is going to come in after today. That's probably what it's waiting for. I have to then make 0.5% in a day. So only after today will it come through that I've passed this. But yeah, you can see that the profit target's been met. 5k has been achieved, and it's been hard. I'd say especially the fivers, I'm not going to knock them, because I think overall once you've passed the challenges, it's the best prop firm. It's maybe the way that I trade on higher risk on the challenges. Too easy to get caught out. They've got so many little rules. This rule here, and this rule is nowhere near as good as FTMO. It's crazy how easy it is to get caught out, and they're not cheap either. You can only have 100k. But now I've passed it, I'm going to look to hold and keep that funded account. Should be able to make some good profit on this over the years. And hopefully, yeah, I can't fault the fivers in the way that their spreads are perfect, the entries are perfect, the executions, everything's perfect. Their rules on the challenges are difficult, but if the way I see it, barrier to entry high, the less amount of traders that they're going to have to acquire for funding, the least they pay out, the more money they make from challenges. And if you can do well with the fivers, it's worth doing. But yeah, no way was that easy. That took me from September to now to pass. And FTMO, the phase 2 took me just over a month. Phase 1 took me 5 months. I'm going to put out there that it took me 6-7 months to pass that. But ultimately I passed it. And from that point, I've got 5-6 payouts from FTMO other challenge funded account that I've got. So overall, I'm in good profit. Hope you guys had a great week. See you guys later. Peace out. Take care. And I'll see you on the next one.